3, 2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but tonight we are continuing our strange May-themed a month suggested to us by Brandon here. And we took a little bit of hiatus, and I want to dedicate this episode to Brandon, your mother-in-law, tonight. So I hope you don't mind that.
I wonder what she would think of that.
I don't think she'd have watched this film, but yeah, sure. But yeah,
I at least wanted to dedicate something to her. I didn't know her, but I wish her well wherever she went.
Yeah, thank you.
If she went anywhere. So.
Yep. So, in the spirit of Strange May, we'll be having one of the episodes for the month being in July, just to keep the strangeness alive.
Seems appropriate.
Alrighty. Well, I'm going to hand this over to Jake because he's the one who chose this movie. Why don't you tell us what movie you subjected to us to this week?
Okay, well, we are looking at a little bit of a departure for me because it's very rare that I put forward really recent films, but I do it now and then. But when Brandon suggested Strange May, I had a movie in mind. But then I watched Poor Things to prepare for this year's Versus Awards. And I said, hands down, this is one of the weirdest freaking movies I've ever seen. We have to do it. So we are looking at the film by Yorgos Lanthimos, written by Alistair Gray, based on a novel by Tony McNamara, and starring Emma Stone in her second Oscar-winning role. The movie Poor Things, per IMDb, it is an account of the fantastical evolution of Bella Baxter, a young woman brought back to life by the brilliant and unorthodox scientist Dr. Godwin Baxter. So, we will go ahead and start with you, Dave. Is this your first encounter with this film, and what were your initial thoughts?
Well, it's definitely in my range of things and things that I actually like, and it's definitely a Frankenstein-ish type movie. But it's a little bit kind of different. It's like as if the Bride of Frankenstein went off on an adventure, you know. I was curious about it. I started hearing some buzz about it, and honestly, it was on my radar. So it's not that it wasn't. And I do plan on picking this up and putting it in the collection. It deserves a spot in my collection. So that being said, I enjoyed it. I thought that. Especially since seeing her play in Battle of the Sexes not too long ago, I thought that she did a very off-kilter, surprisingly fresh take in language. It's like she knew how to play a toddler. Things of that nature, you know. I thought that William did a phenomenal job. So, bravo.
Oh, Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much it. I enjoyed it. So definitely different to see what's his name from Wisconsin. Played Peter Pan not Peter Pan played the Hulk.
Oh, Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, Ruffalo.
Is he from Wisconsin?
Yeah, originally he's from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
It says he was born in Kenosha. But
Okay, yeah, Kenosha. He's from Kenosha. I knew it was.
Then he grew up in Virginia Beach, so a nice connection for both of us. Huh?
Yeah. So, okay. I knew he lived somewhere nearby.
Yeah. Good times.
But yeah, I'm pretty much done with my first impression.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just keep her moving in order, I suppose. Tammy, is this your first time with this movie, and what were your thoughts?
Yes, it was my first time watching it. Like before we went on, I was talking about our local TV station has a gentleman called Gino Salomon, and he does. I haven't actually read the reviews, his review page, but he comes on like during the newscasts in the morning and then brings up different films, and like he'll say that he interviewed the director or some of the actors or whatever. So I was aware of the movie and certain points of it and stuff before I saw it because of him. So I didn't, like I said, I didn't actually watch it till now, but at least I knew something about it and everything beforehand. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit different. It has almost like a Frankenstein feel to it, I think. But I was amused by the different how do you put it, creatures. There you go. Without giving too much away, the different creatures that are in the movie.
The different chimera in Dr. Baxter's abode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get the different creatures.
The pig with the duck's feet, or things of that nature.
Well, now that you mentioned that, you got me thinking about the Sewing Life Alchemist. What was his name again? Man, that dude was messed up.
It's a story of a girl and her dog who were closer than ever in this lovely story.
Oh, God. Horrifying. Anyway, sorry, Tammy. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. But yeah, I found it interesting. Yeah. It was kind of wondering what was going to happen next in lots of areas of the film, and kind of wondering what she was going to do next. What she was going to say or come up with or do, it definitely kept you wondering what was next as far as what they call her, Belle, right? Or Bella?
Bella, yeah.
Bella. Yeah. What was next with Bella? So,
right.
Yeah, I was, like I said, I saw things about it before the movie, and I was actually interested in the movie because of the stuff that Gino put up in that that little blip that he does the Gino at the movies, So
I believe you mentioned that one of the scenes that he brought to the table, or was able to bring to the table, was the dancing scene.
Yes, he brought that to the table. Yes.
Uh-huh.
Well, he actually interviewed the Bella. So that was kind of neat. Okay.
All righty. And incidentally, I'd read that Emma Stone took dancing lessons to help her dance poorly, which is interesting. But and Show Tucker was the guy I was trying to think of. One of the most disturbing people in all of anime. But anyway, so Brandon, is this your first time actually watching this, and what were your initial thoughts?
So this is my first time. I mean, I was going to watch it eventually. I'd already purchased a copy because I'd heard it had done well, I think, at the Oscars, and it looked interesting. I love the cover. It has kind of a Alice in Wonderland meets Frankenstein meets Terry Gilliam vibe.
Gilliam probably wishes he directed this.
So, you know, that's so that was kind of fun, and I really thought that all the actors and actresses involved did a good job. But Emma Stone, this has got to be one of her best roles I've seen her in. She does a spectacular job of playing that character that has almost no knowledge of the world, learning to do things like talk, walk, and then so we're not just talking verbal cues, but we're also talking physical acting, like you had said, the dancing scene, or the way that she's trying to learn to walk, or even her cadence, and just the way that she is, just the general way of her speaking, how it slowly becomes more refined, but even when she's able to have conversations where it's still off. And it's really impressive. I really did enjoy it. I mean, the length could have been shorter for me, but otherwise, I did really enjoy that. I enjoyed the visuals. There was no need for the visuals to be as strange as they were, but I did appreciate it, and it wouldn't have hit Strange May quite as well if those visuals weren't there. So I will say that this one was definitely hitting what I had an idea for the theme right on the head. So very good. Very much enjoyed it. It shook up my Versus Awards list, definitely.
Right.
All right. That's all I have to say about that.
Okay. And quick word on the visuals. I'll just go ahead and mention it so I don't forget it. Apparently, the director Lanthimos has stated that most of the film was shot on a soundstage or sound stages, and there's a lot of painted backgrounds and that kind of thing. And he said he very specifically wanted to evoke old Hollywood. And supposedly he mentioned 3 movies as touchstones for this one. And I, for the life of me, can't remember all of them offhand. But one that stuck in my brain was Young Frankenstein. That was apparently one of his inspirations for the look and tone of the film. And I'm like, makes sense. And so that was kind of fun. But at any rate, yeah, this was one that I had. Okay, he said The Ship Sails On, which I don't know that one. Has anyone here seen that? It's a Fellini film.
I have not seen two. I started to watch of Fellini. I think it had to do with that character that is kind of a lover.
Yeah. I've definitely seen some Fellini films. I could see a tone of 8.5 or Juliet of the Spirits in this. And the other one that he mentioned was Belle du Jour, a Catherine Deneuve film by Louis Buñuel. So you got Buñuel, you got Fellini, and you got Mel Brooks. How's that for a trio of inspiration? That makes perfect sense. But anyway, yeah, this was definitely on my radar. In fact, I wanted to go see it in theaters And a couple things stayed my hand on that. One, I am still, or I was, I may be over it now. This is the fourth film I've seen by Yorgos Lanthimos. I have not yet seen Killing of a Sacred Deer. Apparently, he did another film before he really became famous stateside. And he apparently did a short film with Emma Stone that I'm going to have to hunt down. But the film that put him on the map stateside, and the film that I think Brandon and I were introduced to him by, was a Greek language film called Dogtooth that I did not like. To put it mildly, I did not like it. I was like, why in the bleeding hell is this up for an Oscar? I thought it was weird. And I thought it was interesting, but I didn't care for it. But then The Lobster came along, and I'm like, oh, this is an awesome. Oh, damn it. It's by the guy that did Dogtooth. What's
I have the Lobster, and I have the Killing of a Sacred Deer, and I still haven't fully watched.
The Lobster is fascinating. It's artsy. I had trouble saying I liked it, but it's fascinating, and it deserved its original Oscar nomination. And then he did The Favorite, which was his first big Oscar movie. And I think that one ended up winning just Best Actress for Olivia Colman, which was a surprise win for a lot of people. But that was his first time teaming with Stone. And I love The Favorite. I was blown away. I was like, how in the hell am I enjoying this movie as much as I am? And then, so with Poor Things, I was like, okay, it could be The Favorite or it could be Dogtooth. And I know everyone's raving about it, but everyone raved about Dogtooth. So I wanted to go see it, but I held off. And now I kind of wish I had, because the visual splendor of this movie, I kind of wish I had seen it in the movies. But I did watch it to prepare for the Versus Awards. And when like I said, I had another movie lined up for Brandon's theme, but when I saw it, I was like, okay, we're going to do Poor Things. And so this was my second time watching it. And Tammy already hit the nail on the head. When you watch this movie the first time through, and people at home, there will be spoilers. So if you're spoiler sensitive, maybe watch the movie and then come back. But if you're not, whatever, there will be spoilers. But the first time I saw it, I had some ideas what was going to happen, but I didn't know how. For me, that's the thing. It's one thing to have the plot spoiled, but it's getting there that's the important part. And yeah, watching this movie, I was like, half the shit that happened, I had no idea that it was coming down the pike. You know what I mean? And it is a very interesting and fairly unoriginal story. And it's what was I saying? The second go around, I lost that. The freshness of surprise wasn't nearly as strong the second time around, but partly it's because I just watched it a month ago. But it holds up. I'll put it that way. From my perspective, at least, it holds up. And now I want to go back and watch it now that I've gone through all the IMDb notes, and there's certain things that I didn't really, like maybe I kind of spotted them. Like I thought it was interesting that the movie starts in black and white and shifts to color. And I thought there were some further differences, but I didn't really find too much into them. I'm going to try and go into some of this when we talk about the production. But there are some really interesting directorial and cinematographic and design choices that they made, the writing choices that they made, that I want to go back now and listen and watch and go, okay, I see what they're talking about. but that probably won't happen right away just because it is a 2.25, 2.5 hour movie, and I got other stuff to watch. But it's in the collection, and I will be coming back to it. But anyway, and I don't think the movie's too long in terms of the story it's telling. I was engrossed from start to finish. I didn't get bored. But I do think it from a perspective of trying to find time to watch it, that is important to keep in mind because it is kind of a long movie. But anyway, so I guess that about covers it for the intro. And we'll go ahead and say just right out of the gate, we've heard a lot of references already to Frankenstein. A lot of that is intentional. I'm not sure how much of it is in the original book, because apparently the movie is radically different than the book. But the author apparently gave his blessing for Lanthimos to do the story. Apparently he was a fan of Dogtooth. But he passed away before this movie went into production, so he never got to see what the final would be. But it's an interesting one. But some of the Frankenstein references, for one, the main character's name is Bella Baxter. Apparently, and Isabella Baxter was a very real person who was a very close friend of one Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, the writer of Frankenstein. And apparently Mary Shelley's maiden name is Godwin, and Bella's father figure in the film is Godwin Baxter, played by Willem Dafoe. So they're right there in the names. There's a very direct Frankenstein reference that was kind of cool. And there were a lot of little things like that. And Godwin Baxter, in many ways, is a mashup of Victor von Frankenstein and Joe Tucker. He really is in a lot of ways. And I'll go ahead and mention the movie did win Best Makeup. This is at least twice now that a movie has handled the fascinating feat of putting makeup on Willem Dafoe that makes him even creepier than he normally is, and then the movie winning the Oscar for doing so. Shadow of the Vampire being the other one, which we still need to cover that one of these days. That was a good film. But anyway, so this is probably not a film that we want to hit point by point on the plot. Partly because the plot is so freaking weird, but also because we want to leave some nice surprises for the folks at home. But the basic gist of it, the basic setup, we start with what's that?
You start with a suicide.
Well, we start with an image from the back of a well-dressed woman throwing herself off a bridge. Yes. And that is in full color. And then we go to Godwin Baxter, who is a university lecturer who demonstrates anatomy and all this kind of stuff. And we see some of his students talking, and one of them, by the name of Max McCandless, expresses admiration, and he's dressed down by his fellow students are like, were we talking to you? We don't care about, what have you. You're not part of this conversation. But then the professor calls up McCandless, walk with me. And McCandless is played by Rami Youssef. And again, Willem Dafoe is Godwin Baxter. Baxter puts forward, what was it he said? There were some really great lines in this movie, and Baxter had some of them But I went through the quotes in IMDb, and they did not have very many of his quotes, and I was very disappointed at that. But he had one where he said something like, your paper showed signs of conventionality straining towards mediocrity or something like that. But apparently it was enough to impress him to offer McCandless the opportunity to come take notes on a project he was working on, which turned out to be a young woman, Bella Baxter, who, when McCandless first meets her, she has basically very little motor skills, very little speech skills. This is very early in the experiment. And he doesn't, of course, Baxter at first does not tell McCandless what's going on. He lets her know this is a woman in his charge and he wants to chart her progress, basically. And this film, Emma Stone, in a way, gets points for, technically she's playing a toddler, but I've heard people comment, and there's some truth to this, that I wonder if Jimmy Kimmel said something about it at the Oscars. I can't remember. But I heard someone comment that she did what Ben Stiller said you shouldn't do in Tropic Thunder. Go full retard.
Yeah, that was my first thought about it, was that was what she was trying to do.
Right. And again, it's not that exactly. She's trying to show a toddler in an adult's body, basically. Well, a baby, really, and then a toddler, and then from there. And McCandless gamely takes a lot of notes. And at one point, he's like, well, where did she actually come from? And Baxter makes some dismissive comment of, you are here to take notes. When I want to add inane questions to the list, I'll let you know. You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so basically, he continues, you know. And eventually one day, in a fit of boredom, he goes over the doctor's notes and learns where Bella actually came from, or at least he sees the notes. At which point Baxter sits him down and says, I came across this woman. I'd never found such a fresh cadaver. The electrical currents were still there. So I took her home, and I could have saved her, but I didn't know where she had come from, and who was I to bring her back into a life she might not have wanted. But it turns out that this woman was with child, and very much so. So he decides, as he tells, and I wish I could find the exact quote because it was hilarious, and if you guys remember it, but it was something like, he's like, well, I did the natural thing, or I did the obvious thing, or whatever. And McCandless is like, well, what was that? And he's like, I took out the brain from the infant and I put it in the mother. Of course. Naturally, as you do. You know?
Yeah, he was just reading that off just matter-of-factly, like, you know.
So, but that's basically the gist of it, is Bella is actually her mother and her mother, like, she is the mother and the brain of the daughter in one.
And he could have named the child Abby, and the child was quite normal.
Indeed. But he went with Bella instead. And when McCandless meets her, it's a little way into the project. So yeah, I think they probably are more or less at the toddler phase, or young toddler phase, when he meets her. What's up?
I remember him saying when he entered, right when he's going to meet her, saying, "Well, he said basically, she's her body, her brain has not caught up to her body.
Right.
She is the body of an adult, but a brain of a child.
Right. Which is true. in a very literal sense. So, like I said, that gets us caught up to the basic setup and premise for the plot. Anyone have anything they want to throw out or comment on in those early scenes?
I love her little temper tantrums that she has when she's just throwing dishes around and breaking them.
Right.
But other than that, those are still in her early toddler phase too. So
yeah,
I thought you'd enjoy how she ate, David.
Oh, she ate as if she was like a Neanderthal.
Well, she ate like a child, you know. Yeah.
Well, I do think that, there were just some things like the fact that she couldn't control her bodily functions, where she just basically pees right in the floor
Right.
at one time.
Wee! 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 I think she means she's... Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting.
I was expecting that when she kept saying "we," and also it's like, oh yeah, we got it.
Right.
And it's really kind of hard to place the timing in that. I don't know what it is, but it is really hard sometimes to place how it is, what era it's set in, because it feels like 1800s, yet the technology is sometimes more advanced.
Yeah, even the ship,
almost
even the ship had like technology on it that was not of its time period.
And then there was a lot of steampunk.
It looked like a Titanic era steam cruiser.
Then you had the weird airships and stuff going back and forth in the air. So it was just it is hard to tell what the heck was going on throughout time-wise.
I think that is part of the reason why Lanthimos wanted to go with such a fantastical design, because I think my take on it, I guess, is that he wanted I guess he didn't want it too grounded in reality, I guess would be a way to say it. Like he wanted...
Maybe it's an alternate reality.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, sort of, if you give it that fantastical edge of almost a steampunk vision of, it's clearly a period piece, but yeah, the idea that you can't really pinpoint the period, I think probably helps with the willingness to just go with it, I guess you might say, if that makes sense. But yeah, it does have almost a steampunk vibe. Those weird aerial trolleys, I guess, would be the best way to put them. That was an interesting touch. That was in the Lisbon scene, if I remember correctly, was where you saw most of those.
What about the horse and carriage?
Well, yeah.
The horse and carriage where there was just like the head of a horse on the carriage, and it was more or less a steam carriage.
I don't remember seeing that actually, but that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that is that's why I was getting at that.
When she wanted to go outside the first time,
right?
They took her in that carriage, and I noticed it. It was kind of a unique carriage.
I don't know how I missed that. Whatever, right? It's like I said. I guess I just went with it. I was, but anyway. So yeah, as David already pointed out, they do show her progressing rapidly. Actually, she progresses at a pretty remarkable clip. And right through what probably the whole breaking of the plates and stuff, I would almost say it felt like she'd already gone past 2, but it almost feels like a Terrible 2 sort of tantrum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so it's probably the later toddler phase there.
Yes.
And you see a lot of, as she goes, you see her gradually show a little more motor control. You see her speech progress pretty rapidly, but it still progresses in a weird, loopy sort of way. And one thing that I read in the IMDb notes that I think I noticed, but I didn't really take note of, and now I'd like to go back and see it with this in mind, is that, and I know, Brandon, with your psychology background, you might know a little bit about the science of this, but my understanding is that the use of pronouns is something we grow into, and it's generally, and Bella, early in the film, she names everything. She doesn't use any pronouns. And as the movie goes on, she gradually starts using them. And one thing that I had not fully taken note of, but now I'd like to watch it, taking note of this, according to IMDb, the last one she starts using are personal pronouns. I, we, my, that sort of thing. And that doesn't happen till the final London scene, apparently. So did anyone else notice that or find that or something intriguing they want to look into? Or I'm just wondering if anyone else really noticed that. But I thought it was interesting when I read it.
I noticed that she was progressing in her language, but I also was entertained by her lesser knowledge of said dialogue.
Right.
And
Yeah.
she used different words for different things, and it was
Furious jumping.
Well, furious jumping, yes.
Yes. Furious jumping.
I want to do more furious jumping right now.
Yeah, once she figured out what that was, yeah, she liked that.
Well, I have to say that is one of my favorite random euphemisms I think I've ever heard. But she doesn't really mean it as a euphemism. That's probably her literal understanding of it. But yeah, but sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there. But yeah, she definitely does. Like, you notice early on, every time she talks to Douglas Wedderburn or about him, she always says Douglas Wedderburn. But as the movie goes on, she doesn't use his full name every time, I think she actually starts using you and things like that, but she doesn't early on. And that was one thing I had kind of noticed, because his name stands out. And I think that was true of a lot of characters who she would use their full name earlier on, and then later on you don't hear that as much. That was one thing I did notice, and I thought that was interesting. But of course, she always calls him God, which, his name is Godwin, but that's a nice little bit of humility, telling the girl you're raising to call you God. Yeah. That was.
I remember when Max asked him if he was actually sleeping with her, and he was like, "God, no," and went into an explanation that he was a eunuch.
Well, yeah, and he went into an explanation about how he can't get excited. He's like, something like the amount of electricity needed to excite me would be enough to power all of North London or something like that. It's like, oh, wow, that's sorry for you, dude. Yes, it turns out Godwin Baxter had himself a very screwed up father. And he was himself a walking science experiment.
Well, yeah, he called his father, even though he explained all the nasty, sordid things his father did to him. He called him a genius too.
Oh yeah, no, he respected him, and he emulated. He ended up going into the same field. He, and spoiler alert, eventually so does Bella. I mean, science and anatomy and research are in their blood, but the way they go about it, even Godwin Baxter, even he understood that his father was a heartless, unfeeling man and a pretty bad father. He understood that, but he didn't hold it against him. And I think at the end of the day, he saw his feelings for Bella as a failing as a scientist, but the fact that he was able to have compassion for her to a degree, I think saved him from being a total rat bastard, at least in my book. But we'll actually, let's go ahead. It's time to look at a few of the characters. And since we're already talking about Godwin Baxter, what do y'all think about him as a character?
He's quite freaky looking.
Yes, he is.
I mean, as an adult, if you saw him, you would like take a second look and be like, okay, I'm not going near that. I could just imagine that him walking up to a child, man.
Yeah.
But he doesn't totally talk freaky. It's just how he says things. But he doesn't talk like a monster.
I look at Godwin as kind of like an Elephant Man type character, where he's kind of an oddity. And if he wasn't a scientist, he would definitely have been a circus freak of nature. That being said, he is a respected person in his field. And I suppose in polite society, he could probably hold himself very well. The thing is, polite society probably did not invite him to many things.
No, I think he was probably shunned by most polite society. I think you're probably right. He probably would be able to hold his own in a conversation given the chance.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know that he would be given the chance all that often.
No.
Yeah. And I think, what was it? Tammy, you said something. I was going to, I can't remember. Like he definitely talks like a scientist. He talks like a very reasonable, reasoned individual. He says things that are completely insane, but he always, Brandon, that thing you used to have on your computer with the I don't have facts to back this up.
I still have that on my computer.
I get the feeling that Baxter almost never speaks unless he thinks he has the facts to back it up. You know what I mean? Like, but anyway, any further thoughts on him before we move on? And I'll just say for the record, like everyone talks about Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo's performances, I thought Willem Dafoe did a great job as Baxter. I thought he was solid in that role. But
he was perfect for that role. I thought that just playing the man of science was spectacular on his part.
Right. And so we've got the next, I guess the next obvious one is Bella herself, Emma Stone's character. And of course, as we go along, we'll talk a little bit about her overall evolution. This is quite literally a coming of age story. And she undergoes a massive character arc in this film. So Bella at the beginning and Bella at the end are very different characters, but there are also certain through lines that go throughout. But what are y'all's thoughts overall on Bella as a character? And as one, apparently one of the differences between this and the book was told from multiple points of view, but the movie very specifically focuses on Bella and her point of view, which I think worked a lot for the film personally. But what are y'all's thoughts on her?
Well, Bella is an unlearned and ignorant creature at first. She is very much the product of a scientific experiment, and it's not gone wrong because she advances, and it's like she learns along the way from different people, even those that take advantage of her, you know. And she's got a very good mind on her. She's got a very good head on her shoulders. To be honest, I think the brain that he stuck in her mind is probably an even better one than was originally in there. Yeah, if you get my drift.
Right.
Because she learns and she advances, and she reads, and she sits back and listens to all the philosophical conversations from other people from all walks of life, and I think that's an interesting way to learn things, you know, whether it be sailing on the ship with polite society to being one of the people at the bottom of a mattress and being that mattress. So, other than that, that is my view on things. At least on her, where she is involved. Anyone else have anything, Tammy?
Huh?
What did you think about Bella?
Oh, you're done. Very unique. Very well. We know that she's basically got a child's brain in an adult's body.
Yeah.
And so, since we already know that, but people around her don't know that. And so, their perception of her has got to be like wondering what is wrong with this lady, you know? But as she progresses, it's like she always finds a way to act or talk her way out of something that made people raise their eyebrows or look at her weird, you know? She always seems to somehow turn it around, and then they're like, oh, okay, you know? Whatever they thought was weird or whatever, or made them think it's neat, you know, like further on, like, you know, when they take her out in society, you know, when she goes out and she'll say something or do something, and people will look at her, and then whatever she says or does next, it's like then they accept it, you know, accept her. It's just kind of neat, you know. And it's like whatever she says or does that made people raise their eyebrows, and then the other thing is just as like weird, you know. But now it's okay, you know.
Right.
I don't know how else to explain it. It's just I think the actress was phenomenal in it because some of the ways that she says things, which we've already said a few things, um, is it just makes you go, "What? How did she come up with it like that?" Or so. Yeah, I really enjoyed her character because it always me. You never knew what was gonna come next.
She was
So
unpredictable.
yeah,
Yeah, there's that. Right. Does that wrap up your thought there?
yeah.
Okay. How about you, Brandon? What are your some of your thoughts?
I don't have much that's not been already covered, so I think
Okay.
it's good.
Okay. Well, I think, Brandon, I think you might have been the one earlier that made the Alice in Wonderland connection. And certainly
Yeah.
that poster looks like American McGee's Alice almost, but more innocent. But in a way, it's interesting to think about. Alice was very much, even though she was literally a child as she was going through Wonderland, Alice was a product of society. She had her ideas about what was proper, what was expected, what was the way to do things. And she was thrown into a world of insanity that had no respect for the rules, for propriety, for the way things should be done. And Bella is on a very similar journey, but she's coming from a very different starting point, and rather than being a product of society that's going into a world that's well beyond what we would all consider normalcy, she is coming from a blank slate, from a place of no preconceptions, no rules, no restrictions, into society, and having to, in a way, it's a similar trajectory because it's more crazy than anything she could have imagined. But in a way, it's a reverse trajectory almost because, she's coming from the crazy point to normalcy. But it's one big difference is that Alice has to adapt just to make it through Wonderland. She has to adjust her preconceptions and everything. And Bella does adapt as well, but she does a very remarkable job of forcing people around her to meet her halfway. Like, she doesn't just go along for the flow. She, as she's learning and adapting, forces everyone around her to adapt too. And that's really kind of cool. Another movie, interestingly enough, I've seen a few people make this comparison, and now I'm thinking if I do tackle this one again, I would love to pair it with Barbie because there's a lot of similarities between the two movies.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost freaky weird how many similarities in the main characters, because Barbie also starts off as incredibly naive to the world around her. But it's a different sort of story. It's a different sort of journey. I think this one was done better. Barbie, for all of its promise and big ideas, got a little clunky at times. This one was done with a lot more finesse.
Yeah.
It's on the somewhat darker side, if you will, in a lot of ways.
Well, the biggest finessing I've seen in this entire movie is there's an emphasis on philosophy.
Yes.
And different types of philosophy. You have some nihilism. You've got a lot of existential thoughts. The ship is a good example with the varying philosophies and conflicting natures. Of course, you've got the happy-go-lucky guy that she's hooked up with that thought he would just have her for a tryst and dump her, and then she ends up turning it around on him.
Yes.
But of course, you also have her engagement. Matter of fact, when she's on the ship is when she starts to really she starts pulling away almost immediately at the beginning, but she truly starts to come into her own and become a person herself as she starts experiencing the world for what it is.
Right.
And the ship is really where that begins, because she experiences the joys of the world early. And then on the ship, she starts to experience the darkness within the world, which she expounds on after taking his money and giving it away.
Right.
That moment reminded me of Johnny Depp when what's her name got rid of all the rum.
But why is the rum gone?
Right?
Yes.
Except this time it's, well, where's the money?
Yes.
Where's my money? What did you do with my money? It's somewhere, right?
Oh, I'm reminded of another line from Empire Records. Where is my money? Recirculating. I love it. But so we'll get to Duncan Wedderburn in a minute. But first, to talk a little bit about Max McCandless, Rami Youssef's character. He, like I said, is the young med student who's brought in to watch Bella, who, after a little while, is approached by Baxter with a weird proposal of, I would like you to marry Bella, and I'm going to insist on one thing. She has to want it too. Two things. You have to stay here. So basically, like any good scientist, he wants to control the experiment. Yeah. And so he wants to make sure that he's willing to hand Bella off to a man, but they have to stay under his supervision. And Max goes right along with it. And he is not happy when Bella runs off with Duncan, but eventually he just becomes Baxter's right-hand man. He becomes Igor de Frankenstein, basically. And he, Yusuf plays him as kind of a limp noodle of a character in most ways, I think. But he does have his moments. And anyway, what are y'all's thoughts on Max McCandless?
Well, he's got Godwin up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
And he's in awe of Emma. In fact, I think when he saw her nipple the one time, that was his first experience with female nudity. So he's kind of a virgin in that aspect, I think, because it seems like he's that kind of a character that probably did not have any relationship with a female at all during his college days, and he seemed like he was kind of a loner too.
This would be a good part for that clip of Ogre. No. Yeah,
Doggy, you're going right way for a smack bottom. But anyways, I think he does play the character as kind of a limp noodle for the most. He kind of is a go with the flow kind of a dude. And of course, when the marriage was offered to him, she's a beautiful girl in his mind. First girl that allows him to touch her intimately in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, he's of course a yes man.
Yeah.
I do think he comes into his own later on, though.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Actually, I think he had. I think he had one of the funnier lines in the movie, but it was given away in the trailer. It's a part later on where after Bella's Paris adventure, where he says something like, "You can give your love freely," and she's like, "I usually charge 30 francs." We'll take it. He's like, "That seems low." But that was kind of funny. But anyway, anyone, Brandon, Tammy, y'all have any thoughts on the character?
I think it was said right for me.
Not at the moment. I mean, I think you guys kind of like said everything.
Okay. I will say he is right at the center of one of the biggest controversies of the film. And I'm a little surprised, Brandon, that you didn't have something to say on this. But the fact is, when he is offered marriage to Bella, I would wager she's probably still got a developmental mentality, maybe in the upper single digits, maybe a little older. She's definitely still a child mentally.
More like she's 13 years old.
What's that?
More like she's 13 years old in mind.
She could be a little older. I mean, I could be underselling it a little bit, but she's still fairly young when he is given that offer.
You want any more of these?
And
do you want to keep a couple packs?
There are people that find there are a lot of people that got hung up on that aspect of the film, and not without reason. But I will say the fact that he jumps at that offer the way he does is a little bit off-putting for the character, in terms of wanting to root for the character. He does seem to have more of a caring instinct. He's not trying to jump her the way that Duncan is, but he also knows more than Duncan does. So it's kind of yeah. But anyway, I just thought I would throw that out there because you can't really not acknowledge that controversy.
He is a knowledgeable character. I mean, he is a learned man.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean he has experience in the ways of women or of the bedroom.
Oh, I know. But I think he is aware that most people would look at that arrangement and go, too young, man.
Yeah, the mental age definitely really messes with the... I thought to myself that whole marriage thing was a bit too premature, especially there. At the end, I could see it more because she definitely matured by the end. Yeah. But at that time, it just... but it went along with the creepiness of the whole idea behind this. I mean, the whole Willem Dafoe character and all that stuff.
Right. And again, from Dafoe's standpoint, I feel like that was entirely in character with him, basically not giving two shits about societal norms. Like, he was a scientist, and to him, it was a 30-year-old body. I think that's what he was thinking.
And he trusts Max.
He trusts Max. And Max is trustworthy for the most part. He did go through the doctor's notes without asking, and he did do a couple other things here and there that he may not have been as trustworthy as he could have been. But the doctor, I think more to the point, he found a kindred spirit in Max. They really are cut from the same cloth. Just Max is much more innocent than Baxter in terms of the things that he's actually experienced in his life.
And as we found out, that Godwin was in fact eventually dying.
Yes.
a man who was looking out for the future of his project, but as well as, and I think he kind of related that he felt more or less like a father figure in Bella's life.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it was like he was passing her off to definitely a better person. You know?
I think at that time he wasn't fully aware he was dying, but it's possible he wasn't. Just played it close to the vest.
No, I think he was starting to have tumors then.
I do like how he presents it to the guy. It's like, all right, I've got some surgery for you. And then just boom.
Yeah. Talk about well, he made a comment on that too. I can't remember what it was, but anyway, so on, I think it was not long before so yeah, I think Bella may have been a little further in her development than I was thinking, but I feel like some time passed as well between the idea of the marriage and when no, actually it wouldn't have been a lot of time. Because it's not long after that Godwin calls in Duncan Wedderburn, a lawyer, to help him write up a contract. And Wedderburn is very intrigued, not upset, not offended, intrigued. What kind of woman would require this level of possessiveness?
Mm-hmm.
And so he resolves to meet her, and he uses a very flimsy excuse of, oh, yeah, he says, I need to, what's up?
I think he said he needs to go to the bathroom or the lavatory.
He does. I don't remember. He probably had a fancier way of saying it. And then Baxter basically looks at him. Are you a child who cannot control your water or something to that effect? and he's like, I think he said, I have shy bladder or something like that. Some sort of flimsy excuse. Mm-hmm. But he goes looking for her and finds her. And he is intrigued. And she is fairly intrigued. We should probably notice that this is not long. Well, actually, this is an argument that she's been with the young teens.
He actually notices that she watches her through a window, and it's kind of interesting because he was kind of a peeping Tom.
Well, that came later.
Her lower regions.
That came after, because the first time he was wandering through the house, but yes, he came climbing up the window later. Yes, she had learned ways of entertaining herself. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And I don't think we mentioned, but we should mention that Baxter had a housekeeper, Miss Prim, who had not really been that fond of Bella all along, but definitely during this time period, it was she became downright concerned.
I wonder if that housekeeper's name was named Prim for the distinct reason of the Scarlet Letter, because Hester Prim was the name of the Scarlet Letter lady.
Could be, or it could have just been a play on the fact that, prim and proper, like maybe she was the household's example of polite society, if you will.
Okay.
Like she kind of represented traditional mores in a house where, for the most part, they were not there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's more what I'm thinking. But yeah, there could be a Scarlet Letter vibe there or connection. But basically, Wedderburn comes up and very playfully chats with Bella, gets her interest and attention, and basically says, I would like to take you on an adventure. And she agrees. She's like, yes, she has every intention of coming back and marrying Max. But she just says straight up, I need to go on an adventure with this man. And basically, she ends up having to chloroform Max to shut him up. One of the few times in the movie he shows a backbone, she ends up having to drug him to knock him out. Then, what's up?
I was just chuckling a little bit.
Yeah. And Max finds him passed out on the floor. I actually wondered about this, and I wonder what y'all think. I kind of got the impression that he was faking it to make it look like she had knocked him out too.
Well, she had actually told him that she
Yes.
was going to go on this journey, and
Yes.
at first he told her, no, I'm not having it. I'm not allowing you. And she's like, I'm going to do this whether you want me to or not. You
Right.
know, in their own language.
Yeah.
And so I think at the end of it, he gave in, and
Yeah.
he kind of played along with this whole thing. And even though he's going to miss her and everything, he's got to let her go.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying though. I think I think she did it. I think he did that so that Max would maybe feel the not feel betrayed by him, I guess you could say. Yeah. But anyway, I was just curious. Okay, yeah. He says, I cannot let you go. And she says, kiss me and set me forth. If you do not, Bella's insides shall turn rotten with hate. And that's kind of an interesting thought there. But yeah, so she goes on an adventure with Duncan Wedderburn. He tells her that he will take her to Lisbon. And she says, Lisbon of Portugal? And he's like, yes, that is the Lisbon. And so they go. And this apparently is where she discovers furious jumping. And she, being very youthful in nature, easily outpaces Duncan, which he is not sure what to make of that. But that leads to rather an interesting interchange between them, where she's like, why do people not just do this all the time? And he's like, well, at the risk of being immodest, you've just been thrice fucked by the very best. It's probable no other man ever bring you to the raptures I have. I feel bad for you. I do furious
He's
jumping.
definitely egotistic.
Yes. And he's like, furious jumping? I love that. I'm rested. Let us go again. Again, unfortunately, even I have my limits. Men cannot keep coming back for more. Is it a physiological problem, a weakness in men? Well, perhaps so. He doesn't know what to think of that. He's not happy about that thought.
She makes him think too. I mean, there are moments he gets very upset with her.
Yes.
And she is able to put him in his place each time.
Oh yeah. And one of the things that upsets him is that she is full of energy after this, and she goes for a tour about the streets of Lisbon and doesn't come back for a while. Now, it's not entirely intentional. She gets lost and has time trying to find her way back to the hotel. But he gets very concerned, especially when she tells him she had an encounter with another individual while she was out. He gets very upset and basically traps her on board a steamboat. But before we go into that, does anyone have any comments on the whole Lisbon segment or anything up to this point that they want to mention?
Well, I think it was a bit of her exploring her freedoms of being out and about. And
Right.
he showed her a little bit of the food on their first day in Portugal, but I know she also ran into music in
Yes.
Portugal, which I thought that was a very interesting interlude with the woman on the balcony and whatnot. So I think it was just her experimenting with how she does on the outside without anyone around to dictate or tell her what to do. So when she comes back, she thinks nothing of it. Yet Duncan seems to get a jealous notion in his mind about her disappearance. It's like he thought that he was in control of the situation and the relationship, and yet she was doing things to make him worry.
Right.
So it's that type of the stuff that she did that kind of like upset him and eventually was his downfall as well.
Well, one could say this is one of the more childlike aspects of her demeanor is her insatiable curiosity. She has just a tremendous curiosity. There was a sequence that we didn't really talk about earlier on where she threw a fit about not being able to go outside Baxter's house. So he ended up taking her and McCandless on as we referenced before, the horse and buggy. And he tries very hard to shield her from outside influences, but he can't prevent them completely. And that's one of her early, another scene where she meets McCandless on the roof. And then later when she meets Wedderburn on the roof, she gets to see the city from the roof. But Lisbon is her first time to just explore. It's her first time to just go. And she goes. I mean, she doesn't hold back. She wants to learn. And it's one of the really fun parts of the character, I think. But I can understand why Duncan would be unsure what to make of it, because that level of just reckless abandon for letting anyone know what you're up to, where you are, what you're doing, when you'll be back. That whole idea of I'm just, the whole I'm talking to you right now, squirrel, and then run after the squirrel. That he doesn't know what to make of that. He does think she's sneaking around and having trysts. And again, she admits to meeting someone up against the wall. And they have you laid with another man? No, we were against a wall. But it's she's just exploring, and he literally, it's not in his mind. It's not something he can conceive that someone would just do. So, yeah, I thought that was a pretty fun segment in some ways. But he tells her to get into the trunk, and she does unquestioningly. She thinks I guess she thinks it's a game, or it could be some new adventure. And when she gets out of the trunk, she's like, "You took us to a different hotel." And he's like, "Look out the window." And that's when she goes, "You trapped me on a boat." So that starts the whole steamer portion of the film. And she is not happy at all that he did this. Not at all. He basically made a decision for her that cut into her ability to move freely and what have you. And I can understand her reaction there. I could see that. He essentially kidnapped her. Uh, but what? Before long, she meets two individuals on this ship. First of all, I think. Well, I'm trying to remember. I feel like she meets. They have that dinner first.
Yeah, she ends up walking into the dining room, and she comes upon the old dowager,
Right.
a lady, and she mentions her hair or something like that, or she mentions her hair, and it's kind of like a back and forth, and she is mark for mark, just as shrewd and sharp as Bella is back to her.
Oh,
And they
sorry,
begin liking of each other, I think.
Yeah. They hit it off right away. They hit it off famously. Her name is Martha von Kurzak, and she's played by Hannah Shigula, and her friend Harry Astley is played by Jared Carmichael. And the two of them are an interesting pair. Like you said, the old dowager who just looks at life like, isn't it just a? It is. She's gotten to the age where she no longer has any fucks to give. And Harry is a young cynic. He is very bitter. He does not.
She has not done any furious jumping for 20 years.
Yes. Yes, there are some great lines there. But real quick, speaking of great lines, we skipped a scene. That's where I was getting confused. We skipped a scene in Lisbon where Duncan is trying to get Bella to be part of society. He takes her to a fancy dinner with this couple. And first of all, she spits out her food, just sits there and spits it out. Oh, yeah. And she's like, why would I keep it in my mouth if it is revolting? And the woman makes a comment of, well, I've said that sometimes about her, the guy with her. And she's like, Duncan kind of chuckles at it. And Bella's like, oh, you mean his penis? It's like, yes, Duncan's often taste salty. And obviously that scandalizes them. They don't know what to think of that. But it was, I think it was that scene, or it might have been a little later, where they've had a little bit of, there's the whole dance floor segment, and then they kind of break away, and they're sitting down at a dinner, either this one or another one. But a baby is crying in the background.
No.
And Bella just gets up and is like, I must go punch that baby. I'm like, oh, I love it. I shouldn't love it, but I love it.
Well, the baby was annoying.
Yes. But
oftentimes when children cry nonstop and the parents don't do a darn thing, which means sometimes the parents don't parent.
Yes. And okay, so yes, when Bella is sitting there talking to Martha, and Duncan finds her, and she talks to her, she kind of waves at her new friend, and she's like, "This is Martha. She is my new friend. It was here. Is that not astonishment?" And then she looks at, I hope you use your hand between your legs and make yourself happy. And Duncan is absolutely scandalized. Like, what? Don't say such things, whatever. And later in the conversation, Martha's like, yes, I do occasionally. and Bella was very relieved to hear that. It's crazy. And that's just, honestly, this is one of the interesting things about this is I've said for many years, when it comes to anything sexual, people are way too prudish. They're way too hung up. We have violence all day long. No sex. No. It can be violent as can be. So Bella is going around the world without that preconception. She does not have that sense that this should be shameful, that I should not talk about these things. And we come into a couple of situations where, yes, maybe she could have used a bit of caution, but the idea that she's not hung up on these things does lead to some shockingly frank dialogue that, like I said, some of it's pretty hilarious, but but anyway, and Duncan gets very upset very upset with her new friends, with everything. And at one point he's like, I will throw you overboard. And she's like, so you wish to marry me or kill me? Is that the proposal? It's like, and he doesn't, like you said, he is so good. She is so good at putting him in his place, which is good because he deserves to be put in his place. He's
Yes.
a bit of
He's a bit of a con man and a lech.
Yes. Honestly, he's almost everything you wouldn't want in a man rolled into one. He's a lawyer. He's a gambler. He's dishonest. He's narcissistic.
He's a womanizer.
He's a womanizer. He's all these great things, you know. And a lot has been made about how this is such a weird performance for Mark Ruffalo. In a lot of ways, it is. He usually plays a decent guy. There's not a lot of decency to Duncan Wedderburn, not much at all. So when you see him slowly come unravel because of her, it feels good.
Yeah, the language in this is interesting. It's actually one of the similarities I would say to the Frankenstein book, not movie, which is very different, but the book, which is very eloquent at speech, very much mired in philosophy. And the way that the speech goes back and forth really does take me back to Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the novel,
Right.
Where you've got the monster learning about the world and even philosophizing, which is a pretty cool thing, where you've got this individual here who has taken advantage of this person and starts to realize that she has started to mature beyond him. Not yet, but the idea of developing those ideas of understanding the shades of gray in the world, understanding things, these are ideas, and he wants her to remain more ignorant of those things,
Right.
Because that gives him more control.
And we've already alluded to how she has a watershed moment on this cruise, because Harry and she have this nice little dialogue. Well, there was a lot of dialogue between her and Harry and Martha about different sort of what am I trying to say? Philosophies, but different authors and that kind of thing. And actually, they have a little heart-to-heart later on, where she says, if I know the world, I can improve it. And he's like, you can't. This is the real point. Don't accept the lie of religion, socialism, capitalism. We are a fucked species. Know it. Hope is smashable. Realism is not. Protect yourself with the truth. And she's like, I realize what you are now, Harry. Just a broken little boy who cannot bear the pain of the world. He's like, well, I suppose so. You know. But before that, there was the scene where she's sitting there reading Emerson, and she's talking with Martha and Harry, and Duncan comes up and gets really ticked that she is annoying, that she is not really too concerned about him. And I think one of the funniest sight gags in the whole movie, for me, is where he just takes the book she's reading and throws it overboard. And without missing a beat, Martha just hands her another book and she just starts reading it. And he does like a double take and then he grabs that book and throws it overboard.
And then doesn't he drag Martha or try to drag her over the side?
Later, he threatens to throw her overboard. And she's like, "Oh, I'd kind of like to see that." And she's game for the adventure, but the of course the crew of the ship doesn't want one of their passengers thrown overboard by another, so he is prevented from doing this. But like I said, the real watershed moment is when Harry asks Bella to come with him, and he shows her the slums that are just below the hotel where they're staying, where actually the pathway to them is gone because it's been bombed away. And he just shows her all the dead bodies, the babies, and all this stuff. And she gets really, 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 really upset. And so she goes back to the room and finds Duncan passed out with his winnings from gambling. And she takes them all up and puts them in a box and tries to rush back to shore to give the money to the poor and the needy. But the two stewards stop her. "Ma'am, we're getting ready to take off. You can't go." And she's like, "This has to get to the poor people in the slums. They need it." And they're like, "Well, we'll take it." And she's still naive enough to believe them. But she goes back to the ship relieved that the money is going to people who actually need it. And she doesn't care that she's just given away all of Duncan's money. I don't think she fully understands that at this point. But she also probably doesn't really care because he's been a bit of an ass. And for her own part, when he says, "You've ruined us," she sees it as a new adventure. When the captain comes in and says, "We're going to put you off at the next stop because you can't pay your bill," she sees it as a new adventure. He sees it as, "You've ruined us." So now one thing does puzzle me because the next leg is in Paris. And I don't think they were put off in France. Do you guys recall where they were put off?
They were put off in Paris.
Was it Paris? I thought that for some reason I thought they were traveling through the Mediterranean. I don't know why I was thinking that. I guess maybe if they were on their way back to England, it would have made sense.
No, they were in Paris when they were put off, and
Okay.
it was after that whole "where's the money" situation. That's when the ship's mates brought in the captain. Was like, "Since you cannot pay your fare, we're going to drop you off here."
Yeah. Now that was partly on Duncan because as soon as he woke up, he called someone in to say, "My money's been stolen." He did not stop to think there might be an explanation. He said, "My money's been stolen." So the first
he'd also gambled away everything that was on his person too. Yeah. So
was that?
He'd also gambled away most of what he had.
He had winnings. He had won big at the tables. That was what Bella gave away was his winnings. That's why he was sleeping with it all over him. He probably rolled in it before he passed out. But it was his fault the ship's mate was there in the first place. And when Bella gave her explanation, he just walked away. And then a minute later, the captain comes in. "I've been informed." Yeah.
Which I was kind of surprised because normally, aren't you supposed to pay your passage like before? Before you even get on the ship. So I was wondering why he was saying since you can't pay your way, because to me, if I were bringing you to another place in port, I'd want everything up front, you know.
Well, Brandon's our resident cruiser here. But there are also expenses once you're on board, correct? Yeah.
Oh,
Well, anyway, I don't know. I guess Brandon, you with us?
What was it again? I did.
I was saying you're our resident cruise expert. There are going to be expenses on board as well as the initial.
Well, see, the difference is we're talking about a different time.
This is true.
So if you're talking modern cruising, well, they would have paid up front. So there's no way he would have been kicked off. But for all I know, this is a different thing. So yeah, not quite like modern.
maybe it was the kind of thing where he paid a little bit up front, and once they got to port, they would be paid the rest of it. Which I imagine if you were doing that kind of thing, like to get passageway on a galleon or something of that nature, you want to pay a little bit up front, and then if let's just say you put a down payment, and then once they get you there, then you pay the rest of it, you know.
One might wonder as well, since Wedderburn was such a con man, he was kind of a silver-tongued individual. One might wonder maybe he conned his way on, saying, you know, you don't have to worry about me. I'm good. You know, he may have been banking on those winnings to keep going. And maybe he had an arrangement with the mate that as long as he had money, there was a chance he could pay. Maybe. And maybe the captain. Yeah. So I don't know. Whatever the case, he lost that advantage.
Opportunity.
He lost that opportunity, yes. So they go to Paris. He, of course, is moping around in his sorrow, absolutely furious at her, just furious. He can barely express how angry he is.
He's doing more whining than anything else.
He is whiny. He is whiny at this point, yes. And one gets the impression that, basically, she finds adventure in it. Like I said, she feels that, well, this is, we'll just see what we can find. He is not happy about this, and I'm trying to remember if this is. I think it's later that he makes the succubus comment, but he definitely is starting to say some really unfortunate things. One thing I should say, as far as Bella's language, I don't think we've mentioned. She has and this again may be an aspect of her being mentally at a younger age, but very curious and very much loving knowledge and loving learning. She frequently will say something in 3 different ways. Like she'll frequently say something like a good example where they're on the boat and she says, "We are all on a ship and cannot escape, and there's a world to enjoy, traverse, circumnavigate." You know, she does that a lot. Very almost a redundancy, but it's also just, again, trying out different words, trying out different ideas. It's an interesting quirk that she has that I feel like probably should mention. But yeah, he is very upset with her, and she decides to try to look around and see what she can find. And she comes to this place where they say that they can offer what's the woman's name? Swiney, this very small, heavily tattooed woman and heavily made up woman, asks her if she's looking for work. And, if she works, she can have a place to stay. And of course, it's a brothel.
It's a bordello. Yeah.
This is a new concept for Bella, but she tries it.
Oh, you can do this for money?
Yeah, exactly. She's like, they pay for it. So she tries it out. She makes some money and goes back to Duncan with some treats that she bought with her money. When he finds out, he gets very, very upset, and
she throws him to the curb.
She throws him to the curb, basically. And she goes back to, Madam Swiney, I have examined my situation. I need sex and money. I could take a lover, another Wedderburn who would keep me, but may require an awful lot of attention, or else it's 20 minutes at a time, and the rest of my day is free to study on the world and the improvement of it. Hence, I seek employment at your musty-smelling establishment of good time fornication. Yes. And so she does that. She quickly finds that she doesn't want to fully commit. She balks at the lineup system that Swiney has, but she quickly learns to adapt, to take it as it comes. She has some very unusual clients, but she quickly figures out
how does not like.
What's up?
Most of them she does not like.
Yes, but she does find a way. In most cases, she finds a way to make it on her terms. And, like she asks them questions. She puts puzzles to them. She tells jokes. She tries to make it more interactive. And most of them are willing to go along with it. So, and then in her spare time, she and a friend of hers that she's met there go to classes. She is studying anatomy. She is a very rapt student. She is, working on her self-improvement while, doing something that in polite society is the lowest of the low, even though it's the oldest profession, which has always been kind of interesting. They say it's the oldest profession, but it's one that,
is frowned upon.
Exactly. So before long, she basically, when she parts ways with Duncan, she gave him a lot of money. Because it turns out just before she left, Godwin had given her a lot of money and sewn it into her dress for emergencies.
Well, technically, she didn't give him all of it. Yeah. He took it, essentially.
She took it out. He was like, you had all of this the whole time, basically. And then, yes, he ends up taking it. But she gave it to him to book his passage home, and he doesn't do that. He ends up hanging around, trying. What's up?
He ends up hanging around and making a spectacle of himself.
Very much so. To the point where he's even taken and locked up at one point. And I was a little unclear about whether he had been put into a sanatorium or a jail or whatever. It almost looked like a sanatorium, but it seems like he was able to get out easily enough.
Well, it seems like the general, the character that we become known as the general, finds him and uses his knowledge of the situation.
Well, no, Max found him. Godwin sent Max to find her when he revealed that he was dying. But yes, then at the wedding later, the Duncan shows up with the general. So the general may have been the one who actually got him out. We're a little unclear about that, but that's the. I just came across the. I came across the interchange where they were talking about throwing Martha overboard, where it's like Bella's just like, "I dare you." And then he storms for the deck. Harry's like, "Where are you going?" "She is going over the side." And Martha's like, "Marvelous. I never imagined I'd be murdered. How dramatic." It was good times. But man, I can't find the thing that Duncan says. But he basically says at one point, "I have become the thing that I hate, a grappling succubus, something, whatever." But basically, he acknowledges that he pretty much has become a hanger-on toward her, But yes, Max get.
Oh, did we go?
And we get to, they have a little meeting where, she comes in and, he gets to finally be like, "Okay, you've returned." They have sort of a kind of a touching reunion. But then, was it right then? I think it might have been. Oh, yes, Bella came back. That's what it was. In Paris, more than one person commented on her abdominal scar. And her friend straight tells her that's a baby scar. And she's like, "No, it's from an accident." But it's in her brain. She's very concerned about it. So when she sees Godwin again, she asks him. And that's when he finally tells her where she came from.
Well, he also sends her a postcard saying that that he was dying.
Well, yeah, that's why I said that's why she went home.
Yeah.
But that was when he decided she can handle this. She needs to know. And so she looks at the notes, and Max comes in on her looking at the notes, and she's like, "And you knew?" And he's like, yes, I did. And she is very put out with them, obviously,
She's
first.
upset with them, at least at first, which
yes,
I think is why she made her decision to eventually go with that creep that showed up at the wedding.
Well, that's part of it. But she did go about it. Basically, she needed time to think about it. And she came back and basically, and again, I did not see the exact quote. I kind of wish I did because it was a pretty decent one. But she comes back and looks at Godwin. She's like, "I do not forgive you for what you did, but I do thank you for it." Like, if that makes, like, I know I'm misquoting it, but it's basically she thanks him for giving her life, but she tells him point blank, "I can't forgive your methods," basically. but
Did
she
we
is
even
willing.
mention that while Bella was away, they started another experiment?
Oh yes, no, we did not. Yeah, they started another attempt at the same experiment, which by the end of the film we see progress, but it's clearly not going to be the same. It's yeah, that was an unfortunate. And that one, was that the one they called her Felicity, right? Am I remembering that?
I think so.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that was Felicity. And she is played by Margaret Qualley, and Prim kind of takes pity on her, I guess, in a way she was never able to with Bella, and they almost become close in a way, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, both Baxter and McCandless are quite disappointed by the frustrating lack of progress of that experiment.
Some brains cannot be learned.
So I could just imagine Baxter would be like, what brain did we use? Abby something.
Son of a bitch.
But anyway, so yes, she comes back again. She's like, I'm not going to forget. I'm not really going to forgive, but I understand. And then she has that talk with Max where that I mentioned before, where she's like, I want to give love freely, and then he's like, that seems, or I usually charge 30 francs, and that seems low. But during that conversation, she makes it clear that yes, she does still intend to marry him. And so they do. They get ready. They get ready to. They're about to have the wedding, and then it's crashed. It comes in. Someone comes in like, "Is this the point in the wedding where we get to object, or something to that effect?" Yes, and that's where we see the general, a gentleman, and I use the term loosely, by the name of Alfie Blessington, who is played by Christopher Abbott, and skulking behind him is Wedderburn. And
the general calls Emma Elizabeth, if I remember correctly.
I believe it was Vanessa.
Or Vanessa, was it?
I believe it was Vanessa.
Okay.
And actually, there had been a moment earlier where a random passerby had said, "Oh, Vanessa Blessington, I haven't seen you in years." And Bella just straight looks at her, "And you still haven't. My name is Bella Baxter." But later on, Alfie says straight up, "No, you are my wife, Vanessa." And basically, Wedderburn had apparently posted, I think they said he posted her picture in the paper or something, which makes me think that McCandless got him out and he had returned to London, because that might have been how he was able to get hold of the general's attention with this ad. But basically, he, I guess, filed a missing persons report, and the Alfie recognized his wife and came to get her back. And later we find out that is very precisely what he aimed to do. That he says, "I am in the business of acquiring territory, and you are my territory." Basically, he has a very much an ownership look at his wife, and he is not going to let
her as his property.
Yes, and he is not going to let her go, not easily, at least.
That was many men's thoughts at that point. Well, at least at the time period that I think that the director is trying to portray, even though there are definitely very much some futuristic technology in the film.
Oh yeah.
I feel like he's trying to portray the 18th century, So
18th to early 19th. Yeah, like I said, I think he's probably covering a few decades on purpose. But yes.
All I know is the husband is he's like a tyrant,
Yeah.
He is amused by anything that makes somebody else unhappy or uncomfortable or scared,
he is amused at others' pain.
Which
Well, there's a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
But he pulls his gun at everything.
Yeah.
Well, not at first, and I do want to mention
but he's definitely got his servants cowed. That's for sure.
I do want to mention before we go into all that, the reason why Bella decides to go with him is probably because she wants to know the full story behind her. She wants to know why this woman, whose body she now inhabits, had killed herself in the first place. She wants to know where she came from. And she, kind of like when she ran off with Duncan, she didn't feel that the marriage with Max needed to be, I guess she didn't really feel the need to prioritize it. Which, has got to feel so good to him. But
I feel like she needed to take a sabbatical before she actually got married, and actually needed to enjoy her life first before she sat down and got married.
Well, yeah. Although, again, I think the whole trip with Duncan was supposed to be that. Again, I think this was more of she wanted to know who this man was and who her mother, I guess you could say, was. She wanted to know the story. And she was curious about this guy. And in fairness, he did not show his teeth at that moment. He came on as this guy who missed his wife. That's the face he showed. It became pretty apparent pretty quickly that he did think of her possessively, and that, he was kind of like Wedderburn, a very arrogant, self-important man. That became apparent almost immediately. But yeah, it wasn't really until they were back home that he really started waving the gun around. And the part I think that really gets it is when they sat down to dinner, and she's like, how did we meet? And why did we become a couple? And he's like, well, we had the same interests. And that's when he started demonstrating what a cruel, sadistic rat bastard he is. And apparently Vanessa had also enjoyed cruelty toward people of the lower class. So that definitely gives Bella something to chew on that she's not super happy about. But I think she also really almost right away starts fearing the choice that she made to be in a house with this guy. She quickly feels trapped. And then she overhears him talking to a doctor about a procedure that would, I guess, make her more docile and pliant, in his mind at least. And that's when she decides she has to act. And she does. The whole thing with him lasts just a couple days, I think. And not a huge amount of time in the movie either, maybe 20 minutes of the full runtime. And she manages to get in a scuffle with him where he shoots himself in the foot. Then she chloroforms him and takes him back to Baxter's house, where he is given the brain of a goat.
Yeah.
And no great loss.
The brain of the brain of a goat, but his head was put on the body of one too.
No.
No, his head was still on his shoulders. That was,
Yeah, he just had the brain.
yeah. The now
Oh,
it would have, and that's where we get to our final sequence where we see Bella and Max and Prim and Felicity. The good doctor has, of course, passed on, and actually, yes, it was his passing was right after her return, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and I think there was a nice little scene with him and her and Max. But yeah, so they're all sitting around. Bella's friend from France has come to visit. She's hanging out, and meanwhile, the good general is walking around on all fours, eating foliage on all the shrubbery. And that's the end of it. There, that's all she wrote. So we've gone through all the plot and most of the characters. Anyone else have anything else they want to cover on plot or character before we go into the rest of it?
Nope, I don't think so.
Yeah, nothing else on my end.
Okay. And like I said, hopefully we left enough of the beats for people to find on their own, because there are some really cool random moments in this movie that and again, hopefully y'all listen to my spoiler warning at the beginning. But so now we got to talk about the production. I've already mentioned a couple bits. One being that they were going for an old Hollywood look. They were going for a hyper realized sort of weird. There is sort of an Alice in Wonderland vibe to much of it, but there's also a Frankenstein vibe that runs throughout. And again, Young Frankenstein was a big touchstone. Again, I haven't seen Belle de Jour, and I've not seen that Fellini film, but I've seen a lot of Fellini films, and I know Buñuel by reputation, and I could definitely see the touches in this film that call back to them. Now that I've got Fellini in my brain, I can definitely see the Fellini influence. But as far as some of the other stuff, one thing that I noted early on, that first scene is in color. And there are a couple of moments that it goes back and forth before it goes from black and white to color. But for the most part, the early part of the film is black and white. And then, according to what I read on IMDb, I kind of noticed this, but I don't have as keen of an eye as a cinematographer would have, so I might not have caught all of it. I wonder if y'all did. It supposedly goes from black and white to hyper saturated, very intense color. Like the whole Lisbon sequence is very colorful, hyper saturated, to a more moderate but still oversaturated look, to the London sequence at the end is supposedly filmed straight with no, just color with no real enhancements. Did anyone else kind of notice that progression, or?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
As far as production goes,
Right. Well, before you go off on anything else, I do want to finish this thought, but I was just curious if anyone else had noticed that. Because according to what Lanthimos and his cinematographer have said, they were trying to imitate the development of the brain. Because supposedly babies cannot see color until I think it's 4 months. Babies cannot see color. I don't know if I've heard this before, but I don't think I really had that locked in my brain.
Oh, would that be considered colorblind?
Essentially, yes.
Okay.
And then children see everything. It's all wild and new and crazy. And then by the time you're an adult, you're kind of settled in. You kind of, okay, this is the way of the world. You know what I mean?
Well, things are in black and white at first, and then of course the next stage I think is the kaleidoscope
Right,
stage,
right.
where everything is all colors and moods and things like that. And
Right.
um,
So that's and if you look at like children's toys and picture books and whatever, they're always very brightly colored. A lot of it's like primary colors, but it's like a lot of bright colors. And that I had heard that before, and I just, again, that wasn't really locked in my brain. But when I read that they were trying to imitate that with the film, I was like, that's kind of cool. Why did this not win for cinematography? But yeah, the film did win 3 production awards. It won for production design, it won for costuming, and for hair and makeup. And from my perspective, it pretty much knocked all 3 of those out of the park. But what are y'all's overall thoughts on that aspect of it, on the various? Dave, this would be a good time. I didn't mean to cut you off before, but like this would be a good time to head where you were headed.
Definitely. Well, as far as production goes, I thought that they got it right for the costuming. I mean, the costuming was definitely phenomenal. I thought that what they were wearing was different, but also time period appropriate. So, that being said, I've always been a fan of black and white movies, so I love the fact that it went into black and white territory as well as colors. And I do like the take on Frankenstein that they took. It wasn't exactly the Burke and Hare a way of going at it, where they were trying to find a specific cadaver for the brain or anything like that. It had already happened. The procedure was already done. The experiment was already in going on. And I thought for each of the different adventures of Bella, it was well put together. So that's where I stand on production. Anyone else?
Good times.
Oh, the production overall was amazing. I mean, just visually speaking, you really don't get to see the time aspect. It's like it's hard to figure out what era that takes place in, but at the same time, I kind of like that weird ambiguousness, the very strange visuals that, like I say, it reminds me of a cross between Terry Gilliam and Tim Burton in a lot of ways. And I really did like that. I thought production-wise, costume design, hair, I mean, it just is excellent in all areas. I can understand why it would possibly even win awards in that area because it is really good.
Right. I think as far as the not rooting it into a particular era, another thing that it serves to do is it almost makes the movie a bit of a fairy tale. I mean, it's kind of, in a sense, it's a lot like The Princess Bride, because The Princess Bride also had that old-timey look. It was filmed on sound stages with a lot of painted backgrounds and that kind of stuff. And it really was meant to evoke the feel of a fairy tale. And I think that they may have been going with a similar vibe here. sometimes it can be very useful to have it not like if they had been very specific of like this takes place in 1941 or this takes place in 1912 or it would have grounded the film in ways that weren't really necessary to the story, if that makes sense. I think by having it a little more broad ranging, it allowed us to focus more on general issues of society rather than society in a particular time and place, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if y'all agree with that. But, yeah. But anyway, so anything else on the visual aspect or anything like that? One thing that apparently I read apparently that Bella's hair actually was a mistake. They were not planning to have it be as dark as it was, but they accidentally made it that dark, and they looked at it and said, "This works." So,
Tammy, what did you think about production?
right?
I thought it was really cool. I'm like all the different areas, like when they're in the town. I think it's Lisbon is called. The place just looks like something from another world. It's just
Right.
And then I don't know how you what you would call the how they did the photography,
The cinematography?
the cinematography, because I even made a comment to David about how they were making the scene look and everything, that I thought that was really neat.
Oh, like the part where they were walking down the one street, and it was like sort of like they were panning it across.
Right, and they did a lot of that in the town, but they did a lot of it on the ship too. They used.
Well, yeah, the inside of the ship had some interesting shapes to it too.
But
like odds and angles and whatnot that I'm not sure would have been on a regular ship.
I liked how they that cinematography that they used. Like I said, I told Dave. I even said something to David about that's kind of neat, because it gives it a whole different look, a whole different feel about what's going on.
Right.
So I like that part of the production. And oh yeah, the costumes were very good, and like you've been saying all along, I don't think this is necessarily just one time period. It's like a whole mixture because of the different things in the backgrounds and the different clothes and everything. It's just you can't say that it's just one time period. It's like a whole mixture of. It's almost like she is a whole mixture. Bella is. So everything around her is a mixture. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So. Okay.
All right. So, quick word as far as the music. This is apparently the first Lanthimos film to use an original score, and it's by Jerskin Fendrix, who is apparently known primarily not as a composer, but I believe he does sort of, it's kind of like Jan Tiersen, who ended up scoring Amelie and has worked, or no, not Jan Tiersen's the director. Okay, I'm drawing a blank on that one. I feel really bad about this because I love that score so much. But it was the he's apparently a. Yes, it is Jan Tiersen. Jean-Pierre Jeunet is the director. Okay. So, and it's kind of like Cecile Corbel, who did the score for Secret World of Varieté. Apparently, they're not professional movie composers, but they do they are professional musicians. And in this case, Lanthimos heard an album by this guy and said, I want him to do the music for the film.
Okay.
Personally,
well, he was also a restaurant musician in Lisbon in the film. So.
Yes, he has a cameo in the film. Yes. Personally, I thought it was very strange music. It's nowhere near what I would consider the level of iconic awesome that Mark Knopfler's score, which again, Mark Knopfler, not a composer so much as a professional musician. His score for Princess Bride is straight up classic. It is a iconic score. This one, I'm not so sure I'm going to be feeling that way 10 years from now, but it is interesting. It's weird and it fits the vibe of the film. But what are y'all thoughts?
Definitely, it was serviceable enough for the director to continue to use him, because evidently he's got a future project called Kinds of Kindness.
Yes, which also stars Emma Stone.
And apparently he's using the same composer.
Yes. Yeah.
So
he, apparently a lot of the people he worked with on The Favorite are on this film, and a lot of them will be in Kinds of Kindness. In fact, Kinds of Kindness stars not only Emma Stone, but Willem Dafoe and Margaret Qualley. So 3 of the cast here will be starring in that one, along with Jesse Plemons, Hung Chow, and a couple other folks. So that's kind of fun. That one's due for release this year.
I honestly didn't hear the music, so when I watch it again, I'll probably pay attention to it. But I think it went with the film. That which I remember of it.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on the music?
I thought it fit what it needed to fit. I wasn't like particularly impressed, but I wasn't taken out of the movie either. So it did its job for me.
Right.
Same here. I thought it basically did what it needed to do.
Well, like I said, like some of the people I mentioned before, I mean, I grew up on Dire Straits, so I know Mark Knopfler. I love his stuff. But the other 2, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, Jan Tiersen, Cecile Corbel, both of them, listening to those scores, I wanted to hear their music. I wanted to find the album. I wanted to check it out. This one, not as much. This one, I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll listen to his work on the next film and then I'll make up my mind. Sometimes it works great, and so But again, for what it was meant to do in the film, I think it did its job. Anyone else have any other thoughts on the production, the music, the costumes, the makeup, any of that kind of stuff? Or are we ready to move on to favorites?
I'm ready to move on.
Okay. So, let's say we will look at, if you have a favorite scene or favorite moment, line of dialogue, whatever, favorite character, and in the spirit of the month, on a scale of 1 to 10, would you rate this as a strange film? 10 being strange. We'll just start on the right and move left. Tammy?
Okay, let's see. Well, my favorite character is Bella. What else can you say? She keeps you never know what to expect. She just keeps you. She's unpredictable. She keeps you guessing about what she's gonna do or what she's gonna say or how she's gonna react to this or do that or do this.
Right.
And all the different ways she says things and comes up with things. It's just like what Geez, favorite scene. How did she say that again? The jumping thing.
Furious jumping.
Huh? The what?
Furious jumping.
Furious jumping. That's right. I guess when she first starts coming up with that saying, furious jumping, that's what I get a kick out of, because it's like, she says it more than once, and as soon as she says it, you get a visual of it too, that so I get a kick out of that. As far as do I think it's strange, I'd probably say about an 8.
Oh my. Okay. All right. Is that wrapped up for you?
Yeah.
All right. How about you, Dave?
Well, I would have to say that Bella is my favorite character. There are just many different moods, Bella, that I'm sure we have all gone through. I'm sure we've gone through our terrible twos, throwing things, and throwing temper tantrums when we want to get our way. I think everyone goes through that types of things. I'm not sure if I would have had as much flights of fancy to have an adventure and go around the world with not a penny to my name. In that kind of instance, but I suppose being a woman kind of helped her in her advantage. Not to be sexist or anything like that, but it is easier, I think, being a woman in that kind of a context. As far as favorite scenes. Oh yeah, whenever she would refer to the furious jumping, that was probably my favorite phrase that she ever said. But I think one of my favorite scenes is when she is shown the darker side of life, and she even though she was told if they were given all those people who were on the lower side of life were given this money, then they would never stop coming back to her or whatnot, and try to kill her over it or something like that, And then, of course, when Rafala was like, "Where's my money? Where's my money?" So those were my favorite scenes. Every time she put him in his place, because he ended up being a fucking dick throughout the whole thing.
Right.
And what was the other thing you said?
Oh, where you would rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 for strangeness?
I would say a 7, because it is a strange movie, but honestly,
by your standard, 7's impressive.
Well, there were some oddities and whatnot, but I've seen stranger.
Okay. All right. Well, we believe you. We believe you. I think you've shown us stuff that's at least on par with this.
Yeah.
Anyway, how about you, Brandon?
Well, I would say I like Willem Dafoe's character the best out of all this. And to me, one of my favorite parts is when they're on the cruise and the guy takes them on that stop to show the horrors of life. That idea that's like, yes, you could go down there and try to help them, but they would kill you. But of course, if one of them were to come up here, then we would end up killing them. It's just the way, things are. And I have to say that's probably one of the things that I thought was interesting. Again, I like the philosophy of this whole deal. But that's just my thought on it. I mean, as far as weirdness, I'd say about a 7. I mean, this has a lot of weird imagery, but the story doesn't go too weird. I think I'll give it a run for its money when we cover Dave Made a Maze at the end of the month. But very much on par with what I was looking.
Okay. All right. Well, for me, and I know I say this a lot, there's a lot of little moments I loved. And I will say, if there is a phrase that I may have to add to my personal lexicon, it might be furious jumping. It's like, I love that phrase. It's so descriptive in a weird sort of way. But probably my single favorite line in the film was probably, "I must go punch that baby."
Yes, that was a great line.
And I really love Martha's reactions. Like when Duncan threw the book overboard and she just leaned over and gave Bella another one. And then later, like, "Oh, I'm going to be murdered. How delightful." And she was a trip. And she gives Bella a run for her money as favorite characters go, but she had so little screen time, and Bella just had such a phenomenal character arc that I gotta go with her as my favorite. But I give Martha honorable mention. As far as strangeness goes, even I have to concede this is probably not the strangest Lanthimos film I've seen. That might yet be The Lobster. I would need to see that again. Dogtooth was also pretty freaking weird. But that was a more conventional kind of weird. Like, I've seen those awkward family drama kind of things. Noah Baumbach's Stock in Trade is more what Dogtooth is. I would say all three of them are weirder than The Favorite. The Favorite was a straight up mainstream film by Lanthimos standards. This
The
one,
strangest movie I've ever seen so far is The Night of Something Strange.
well, it's appropriately titled.
Well, yeah, that's more of a disturbing strange, but yes.
I would say the film I almost went with was Being John Malkovich, and I would almost say this is about on par with Being John Malkovich.
Another strange movie I would say is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That is, but not as strange as the book. The movie played it much safer than it should have. The book was wonderfully strange. But I've seen some strange ass stuff, and I know, Dave, you subjected us to Bunny the Killer Thing, which is probably at least as strange as this is. There were a couple that we've done, and the first one I ever did on this channel, Mother, was a pretty freaking strange movie. But I would have to rank this a little stranger overall, I guess, than you guys did. I think the first time I saw it, I would have said easily a 10, but having gone through it a second time, I can knock it down to a 9. There's still some strange ass films out there, but in terms of like, this is my kind of crazy, you could say. Like, it's strange but thoroughly enjoyable, just like being John Malkovich. And then I see strange that's like,
your Cohen brothers films are strange.
what's up? Well, yeah, The Big Lebowski is a strange ass movie, but I would say Big Lebowski would be more like an 8, maybe. And that's probably one of the stranger Coen brothers films. But their films probably average about a 7, if I had to be. Terry Gilliam probably averages about an 8 to 9.
Terry Gilliam tops them all.
Zero Theorem would be high up there for a strange ass movie.
Well, all of those films by the guy who did Rubber.
Oh, geez. Yes, Rubber and Wrong are very strange.
I still gotta watch that.
I gotta watch the last one and that, like the deer.
The Buckskin.
Buckskin, yeah. I need to figure out
I
that
still
one.
need to see that. But anyway, so I guess that about covers it. I hope this was an appropriate kickoff to the Strange May. Yeah, I guess back to you, Dave.
Okay. Well, why don't we go ahead and let the audience know a little bit about ourselves? So, Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Kotobukijake. Every once in a while, I pop up as the co-host of the YouTube channel SeptumSin versus the World. We had a lovely discussion last week on the anime servant service, so that was good times. Pretty strange too, but nowhere near this level of strange. Actually, speaking of, with anime, Cat Soup might outstrange this movie.
I think Cat Soup definitely. Actually, and the one that we did a double feature on this channel with a while back, that one and Dead Leaves.
Yes, Dead Leaves is strange too. Anyway, I keep quite busy. I do have a full-time gig, but I did take a few days off to skip the state a little over a week ago, and did a lot of traveling about, had some good times, checked out the Biltmore, but more to the point, checked out some of the woods nearby. And we stayed in a literal cabin in the woods where we were greeted by a huge ass spider at the doorknob. So that was kind of fun.
Doorknob spiders.
Yep. And the house next to the cabin looked like a military installation. So, it was good times. Yeah, I do try whenever, this time of year, of course, I try and get outside whenever possible. But I am also trying to make time to get ready for the Versus Awards. And that is one of the reasons I put this movie forward, because I knew it was going to be potentially a strong contender. And I was hoping to get a number of people to watch it. But unfortunately, we had our usual... we had our usual crew tonight. I don't mean unfortunately in the sense because they're all awesome, but like I was hoping we might get Dustin or Dane or even Mo, but I wasn't holding my breath. But we still, it was, I'm trying to get a lot of last minute viewing done for the Versus Awards, and that's taking up a fair bit of time too, and trying to get some reading done, and just generally keeping nose to the grindstone, as they say.
All righty. Heading over to you, Tammy. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I go on this channel and another one with David, my fiance, and talk about movies and listen to everybody else's ideas. Check out a lot of films that maybe I never would have seen before, and most of them I enjoy. And now that the weather has changed where we live, and I've brought out my car already and looking forward to more shows.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
SeptumSin versus the world. We're working on getting things back in track. But for now, buy our films. Let's see what's up there right now. There's the Boris DVD. There is Amityville Webcam, which is my second directed film. And of course, there is the Shackle Demon Project, which is also on there. There's a link below in the description that you can check it out. Hopefully Dave's film, once he gets all of his others set out, that'll probably also be up there soon. But yeah, check that out.
Alrighty, and my name is David Strege. I am one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along on this strange way of a journey. We have been having a blast while we took a small vacation off. Glad that we're back and on track. So that being said, as soon as I get a couple of more film copies out to some of the directors that were involved with Anthology project, I'm probably going to come up with a release date for the actual Blu-ray and DVD of that. So stay tuned for that. I also moonlight on a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we also go on almost every Sunday, but we took a little bit of a hiatus this last week, and we're coming back, and we'll be discussing the film Inception this coming Sunday, so stay tuned for that. But I do some video pickups and video reviews from time to time, and some interviews with some people, so definitely check the and I do some gameplay from time to time. Taking a break from that for the moment, but I'll probably be back and playing just like normal. So check the channel out. It's kind of an interesting cornucopia of things, and I guess I'm planning on being on Brandon's tabletop discussion coming up. So hopefully you can get a chance to check that out as well. In any case, what is next week's film? Tammy, I believe it's your choice. Did you want to say what it was?
Bed knobs and broomsticks.
So on that note, everyone, look forward to seeing you guys next week. I think we'll have a blast talking about that film from the past. So in any case, like, share, and subscribe. And hopefully you had just as much fun as we did. Everyone say good night.
Good night.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night.